Hello everybody, Mike Swenson here with Real Freedom, and we've got a wonderful Real Freedom story for you here today. We've got Nick Correll with RE/MAX, and he's going to share with you a little bit about his background, how he got into real estate. He has a lot of experience here with flips and rentals, and he's got some new journeys ahead. And so we just want to welcome Nick and give him a chance to share more about his story. So welcome, Nick.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me. I guess the way I got into real estate was basically on the investing side of things. It was about 10 years ago now. My brother, my dad, and I decided that we wanted to do something business-wise. We weren't quite sure what that was going to look like. We had some other opportunities that just didn't quite work out. We were going to get into the restaurant business, but thankfully, kind of thankfully, it didn't work out. We decided to, we saw that the housing market was pretty beat up. A lot of good people out there still needed places to live. And, we just kind of thought about the rental market and trying to get into that a little bit. We partnered with a good real estate agent, and they were able to help us, kind of determine the right prices. And we kind of had a set number in our heads, like what made the most sense price wise to get it for, based on the current rent at the time. And
now, just to pop in for a second here, Nick. So you didn't have your license at the time, right? So you were in what industry were you in before real estate?
I was in the restaurant management business. So we got our first place. It was a single family home, and we thought we were going to flip it.
Mm-hmm.
We just, it was a single family. We weren't quite sure what to do. We went in there. We were all three of us were working in there at the time. It was our first one, turn off wallpaper, turn out carpet,
Mm-hmm.
Doing all that type of stuff, updating stuff. And then we found out how much we could rent it for versus how much we paid for it, and put it on the rental market, and it was rented less than a week.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, well, that was pretty good. And then we bought a townhouse, kind of did the same thing, and immediately got rented like that. So we're like, okay, well, there's a lot of people here, that need a good place to rent. And we always kind of prided ourselves on making it a place where we would want to live. Like we didn't kind of cheap out. I mean, we didn't go extravagant, but we did nice carpet, we did, nice paint, and, if it needed appliances or if it needed lights or stuff like that, we're going to put them in. So that was kind of one of the things that we always did. And anytime somebody moved out, we kind of did the same thing. We assessed it, and we'd replace carpet probably a little bit sooner than some landlords might. And we always painted it fully. However, we were able to build relationships throughout the process that allowed us to do some of that stuff, maybe a little bit more inexpensive than somebody else. It's like, okay, we're going to have you do, 10 houses of carpet, but, we're going to want a little bit better of a deal. So, we were able to kind of work some of those deals in together. But so after about a year of working with an agent and, kind of going that route, and we were pregnant with our son at the time, our first kid. And I just decided that the restaurant life wasn't for me. I was working, 60 plus hours a week, and it was nights and weekends. And it was just, I wanted to, get into real estate. They said, create your own hours and, never work. Well, that's not the case as most of y'all know. But anyway, so got my license, did my first deal. I was able to help us find a couple more properties, and kind of the rest was history. So, my main focus is real estate sales. So that's my main business. The rentals have kind of been a side thing. The first couple of years, when I was in real estate, though, they definitely did help out quite a bit, especially getting into them long winter months, in Minnesota, that can tend to be a little bit slower for some agents. And especially when you're starting off, that it definitely helped keep the income stream going. So
you would figure out, so then kind of typically maybe in the winter, you would maybe spend a little bit more hands-on time with your rental type stuff, where in the summer when things are busier, it's like, okay, have other people do the work. And then maybe in the winter you do a little bit more of the work yourself, or how did that
Yeah,
balance out?
so honestly, in the beginning, we did it all. We just, we didn't have the extra funds. We did it all. And, kind of the last, 5, 6, 7 years, we've been pretty much hiring it all out. I'll be honest, our vacancy rate has been almost zero since we've started. Oftentimes we have had it re-rented prior to the new people even moving out. So there's just a super quick transition. Of us painting or something like that. Sometimes they'll leave a tiny bit early, and we'll kind of give them incentive to do that so we can get it ready. But we would always do everything we can to have our places not sit empty, because having it sit empty, you're not just paying your mortgage, you're paying obviously the taxes, but you're paying the association fees, you're paying, all of the utilities. So even if some of the tougher months to rent we found were like kind of December, just because the holidays and stuff in November. So if we had one come due, we would do an incentive. We would say the month of December for $500 or $400 or, $100 just to get somebody in there. So we didn't have the cost of Jan 1, and they were paying, and then it was a year. And so we would do things like that. And, just being we kind of built ourselves on being, a good landlord, meaning to us, it meant, communication with our tenants, number one, and number two would be, if there's something that needed to be addressed, an appliance or, air conditioner or something like that, we were there, by the next day, unless it was an emergency. So that was one thing that we always tried to do, because you've always heard those stories where, I told my landlord, 5 times, we've never fixed it. And so we never really had any of the issues that you hear, just because I think that, some of the business practices we had allowed us to, keep a lot of good people in place for a long time. And we've had some people that have been 5, 6+ years, kind of because of that. And with that too, we've been able to keep our long-term people a little bit under market rate, just because we haven't had to do the whole going and tear outs and clean outs and stuff like that. So kind of a win-win there.
Yeah.
It's kind of a, if they're starting to look elsewhere, they're going to realize that they have a pretty good deal, so they're not going to want to go. But then we're also like, okay, if they did go, we're going to probably spend, $4 or $5 grand. So let's just keep them where they're at here today. And so,
yeah.
That's kind of how we got started. And then we kind of jumped around a little bit, but
so just to give a frame of reference then, so as you're kind of thinking about, how many units are we talking about? I know you had mentioned you'd sold some, so kind of walk us through the numbers there. And then in terms of maybe your real estate sales, just give us a general idea of kind of where you usually plug along at.
Sure. So we had as many as 23 rental properties at one time. And I will say, so we did do 3 different kind of rental opportunities. So we bought them as a rental with the intention of the person that we were helping get into the rental to have them buy it. And 2 of them ended up buying it. One of them just didn't end up working out. So after they moved out, we fixed it up and ended up selling it. We had 20 of them were townhouses, and then 3 were single family. We found, even though they had an association fee, it was simpler for us. We didn't have to worry about, any exterior maintenance, snow plowing, grass, even though most of the time it would be the person that lives there responsibility, but just, other maintenance, roof and siding and exterior painting and, landscaping and those types of things that, just naturally come with an older home. So we found townhouses were the easiest, and, they were super, super easy to rent. So, and then, yes, we've sold a few over the last few years. The market has been appreciating pretty quickly. Most of the homes we've had have doubled in price since we've owned them. And at the time, we kind of make the decision, we put, by the time we put in new carpet and paint them and appliances, we'll spend, 6-7 grand. It's like, okay, do we just unload some and use that money for something different? So that's what we've been doing right now. I think we're down to only about 7 or 8, but have some other opportunities that we'll talk here about in a minute that I plan to do with some of it. But my real estate side of business, I've consistently done about 30 to 35 transactions a year, ever since about my second year in. And I work with my brother. He's a real estate agent as well. He does most of the buy side stuff. I do most of the listing stuff, which has allowed me to kind of have my nights and weekends back and that family time and things like that. So that's kind of, I guess most of how our business or my business is now. And yeah.
So as you're thinking about, a value. And so first of all, so for those that don't know, you're in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area.
Yep.
So how detailed are you in terms of location when you're selecting a property? Kind of walk me through that lens that you look at. How do you find out about these opportunities? Is it a network? Are these properties on the MLS? Are you targeting a certain area? Kind of walk through that phase of how are you looking and what are you choosing?
Okay. So, yeah. So, 10 years ago, up until probably, even 3-4 years ago, you were able to pull up the MLS and there was deals out there that you could buy a rental and turn a profit. It's getting tougher now, unless you're willing to do, quite a bit more work. But most of the stuff was on the MLS that we did find. We've since started flipping houses. I've done about 10 flips. Most of those have come from off market and kind of word of mouth. And kind of once you start doing 1 or 2, people notice it. And they say, hey, I have this opportunity. Are you interested? I've had that happen 4 different times, and 2 of the same person. So it's really kind of, it's once you start, kind of like anything, once you kind of start doing it, you kind of naturally attract that. And, you talk about it in your conversations, people know that you're doing it. And it just kind of goes that way. As far as the rental side of things, there's still deals out there. And I would say probably even more now so than even a year ago because of where interest rates are. If you can look at, what the mortgage would be on it, if you have, that enough for that 20 or 25% down or whatever your lender may require, typically you're still gonna come ahead. And in my opinion, if they're covering your mortgage, even if you're making $100 or $200, a month, you got to look at, the appreciation of the home too. I mean, plus they're paying down your mortgage. So plus you have the tax benefits of the write-offs and the depreciation and stuff like that. So there's really 4 things to look at. You're not just making $100 or $200 a month. You're really making, money that you can't see, but that's there. So,
yeah. I was actually listening to another agent was talking about how, as an example, if you looked at, let's just say $100,000 property, just for the sake of a clean number, you could pay in cash if you had the cash, first of all, to just buy the $100,000 property. But if you put 25% down, leverage the other 75%, now you could buy 4 properties. And he just kind of ran the math on, fast forward 10 years, 15 years. If you did just the one, great, you've got a better cash flow, but the appreciation, it's only 1 property. And then you look at that multiplied by 4, that's the value of leverage, right? And so especially with mortgage rates as good as they are now, it makes sense to do that because it's, quote unquote, free money in the sense of 5 years down the road, it's not like you have a lot of interest expense, and the power of the appreciation, the power of the tax deductions, the power of them paying off 4 mortgages versus 1, like that leverage really grows. And so that makes a lot of sense to take advantage of that money. That's why, banks are there to help leverage that for you.
Right. Right. And, over the kind of the course of doing these and doing the flips, we've kind of, been able to kind of put our money just into the next one and the next one and the next one. Right now I am closing on a house on Friday that I own free and clear just because of how many times we've done it. And, the smarter thing may have been to borrow against that. But, when you're doing a short-term flip, it doesn't make as much sense because you have the upfront fees and stuff like that. So if you're going to be holding it, for less than a year, and if you have the ability to just pay for it, that's probably the right way to do it. But if you're going to hold it for longer, it's definitely not. So, and then just kind of sidetracking too, I found out that my financial advisor there, we have a program, I guess, that where I could put that money into in a stock market, and it's appreciating or whatever it's doing, but I can borrow 100% against that at a super low interest rate. And it's just kind of a line of credit. So that's probably what I'll do for future stuff. So it's in there and it's making money, but I can borrow against it and at a low interest rate. And he said even if you don't pay it back, the dividends pretty much pay the loan itself. So it's kind of a cool program. It's something to look into if you have that opportunity, or if you have a financial advisor and have a lump of cash you can put in there. So,
So how did you? Because you'd mentioned now you hire out most of the work. Are these just relationships that you built as a part of being an agent, or I know that stuff kind of just naturally happens over time, but how did you build those relationships with all those people to help provide that people leverage for you?
Yeah. So we one of the persons actually was doing a project on one of our personal homes and was working for a company that he was kind of unhappy with, and he started kind of going off on his own. And then we just started hiring him for all of our stuff and some of our personal stuff, and we've been using for some of our flips. And then we have a carpet guy who we've kind of paired ourselves with. We'll basically kind of we have an account, we just go in and pay for the carpet, and we just pay him to install it. It's a win-win. It's consistent for them, and it's repeat business for them, so they're willing to do some of that type of stuff. We just have other accounts set up, like even as simple as like we have a contractor card with Menards. It doesn't have as many perks as it used to have. You used to be able to get free delivery over a certain amount, but you still get some other things with it. So those types of things. We set up an account at Day Appliance. Just simple things like that. Whereas if you go in and buy if you go in to buy like a circuit board for a furnace, I mean, it's probably going to be $250, and we can go in there and probably buy it for less than half that, or or a part for a fridge, or numerous appliances. I mean, I can probably fix just about any appliance out there, because in the early years, we would be the ones out there fixing stuff. So, taking them apart and troubleshooting them and stuff like that. So little things like that. And if you do have somebody go out there, I would always try to be there, just to learn, what are they doing? How are they fixing it? What are they kind of troubleshooting things are they going through? Same with our HVAC stuff. The last couple of years was about the year most of our townhouses were built in the early to mid 2000s. They were starting to be 10, 15 years old, kind of right at the time where that stuff is starting to go. Some of the places we've replaced them all, but we have that one guy that we keep going to, so we get a kind of a better rate. So that's kind of one of the things we set up front with people, like, hey, we're going to probably continue to use you, what can you do for us, trying to make it as much of a win-win as possible. Same with a carpet cleaner, things like that, because anytime that we would transition, if the carpet didn't need to be replaced, that was kind of part of our thing, that we needed to have the carpets cleaned. And then we built a relationship with a home cleaner as well. We gave our people the option, hey, you can clean the property, or we'll hire it out, and it's going to be X amount. So things like that. yeah, I guess that's kind of what we did. We just, consistently used the people. And if somebody wasn't quite up to our standard, we'll find somebody new, or kind of word of mouth. A lot of the people that are in the business too know of other people. So that kind of helped generate some of those, additional people that we would use and things like that. So.
Mm-hmm. Now you had mentioned obviously with these rentals, you're working with family, and you're an agent now with your brother. Talk a little bit about that dynamic. How has that been? I'm sure there's been periods where you go through different phases of life, but how has that been working with family on that?
It can be difficult sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
The rental side of things wasn't as difficult. We kind of defined our roles in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
To get a property ready, we would all kind of be there getting it ready prior to us, hiring most of the stuff out. But my role was always kind of the leasing, the checking people in, checking people out, kind of that first line of phone calls and stuff like that. My brother would take all the maintenance requests. So anytime somebody had an issue, he would either try to stop out there first, try to troubleshoot it, and then try to get it taken care of and get it fixed. And then my dad was kind of the back office guy, kept track of everything, all the checks coming in and all the association payments and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of how we divided it there. And in the real estate side of things, I got my license first. I kind of paved the way and, started with the database and stuff like that. That's been a little bit more challenging.
Mm-hmm.
However, we've kind of, like I said, he's kind of does more of the buyer type stuff and some of the other stuff that allows me to have a little bit more freedom. So I kind of look at it as kind of a win-win there.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll be honest, it's not easy all the time. It's a
Right.
little bit more difficult to hold family members accountable than it is, somebody that might just work for you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. And too, I mean, just if you think about it, you guys have been doing this for so long, like life happens too. Like you said, before you had kids versus now you've got kids, like life just changes. And so, priorities change, time availability changes. You guys are, going off and on vacations or stuff. And so things still need to happen. So it's just juggling schedules and different things like that. So it absolutely is adds another wrinkle. And yet too, there's a wrinkle of leverage there too, where if it was just you were just by yourself,
right.
You have to figure everything out for yourself. So there's a balance there, right?
Right. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Cool. So then as you think about your future, so outside of well, maybe we can talk about this. So you've got some exciting things in the works here. Talk about your next phase of life in real estate and what that's going to look like.
So my wife and I have made the decision that we plan to relocate to the suburbs of Nashville,
Mm-hmm.
kind of southern suburbs, kind of like the Franklin area,
Mm-hmm.
specifically College Grove. So with that being said, I'm pretty much going to be starting over. I don't know anybody down there other than the people that I've met the 2 times that we went there in the last
Mm-hmm.
month, just to kind of determine the area that we wanted to be. So.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a real estate coach who will help me with that transition, kind of hold me accountable. But I will be starting over. I've already started to try to join some investing groups down there.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to, I would like to try to get a rental as quickly as possible when I'm down there. I'd like to have, a couple within the first, 12 months that's my goal.
Mm-hmm.
And then possibly, depending on how things are looking, especially with, the pandemic and everything going on, it's a pretty big tourist town. So possibly some Airbnbs, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But right now I'm going to be focusing mostly on the rentals, probably single family. I'm definitely looking into kind of more of the multifamily units out there.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a small building of 4 or 8 or 16. That's kind of going to be I think my next thing that I'm going to start looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, they're all in one location, then you can have somebody kind of manage it, and it's from that dynamic, it's, could be a little bit easier, but I guess we'll see. So right now I'm kind of starting to build relationships as much as I can. I'm joining any groups that I know that are down there, and then, I'm in the process of getting my license for down there, so I can have that for when I'm there. And then like I said, I'll be starting over. I'll probably be doing a lot of nights and weekends my first 12 to 24 months when I'm down there, and I'm ready for it. That's totally fine with me. We're making a big change, and so.
Well, you just take the time that you used to be shoveling snow and chipping ice off the roof. Now that's time that you got back to be able to go spend in your real estate business. So
we are transitioning to so right now I live on a couple of acres and stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff to take care of here, and it's going to be a little bit different where I'm at. We're going to be in an association that has a lot of the same stuff we have, but not as quite as big of a yard. So. But that's what's in store, and going to keep doing what we're doing. And what we've done for the past 10 years has allowed me to be able to do this. Allowed me to be able to go there, not knowing where my next paycheck is going to come from, and I'll be okay. You know what I mean? Just because I'll have still a little bit of income from the rentals that we still have up here, but also I will have what we've kind of created over the past 10 years, and so have some of that leverage and flexibility and stuff like that.
So what's going to happen with your real estate business here? Have you figured that out, or are you still thinking through that?
I'm currently, that's one of the things that I'm figuring out. I will continue to hold my license here for some time. I don't know how, what that's ultimately going to look like, but I will probably have, a primary or maybe a couple specific referral partners up here that, because I'll still have clients, that I'll be in touch with and talking with, and they'll, want to know, who I trust and who they should use next. So I would, that's my plan anyway.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing is, I mean, that is the nice thing about having your license is, that referral business can be a nice chunk, right? Like you've built these relationships over the past 10 years or so. You've got people that know, like, and trust you, that really want to use you. And now you can just say, hey, fantastic, here's another agent that I know, like, and trust. And now you get a referral off of that. And so it's another littler stream of income. And in some ways, like, you don't have to do anything with that, right? It's just, here's this person I trust, and now you get paid for that. So in some ways you can help to keep the lights on a little bit with some of that referral income as you build down in Nashville.
Yeah, that is on my short-term list, or my short-term goal. When I say short-term goal, I'm thinking, my shortest term goal is going to be, to get, 2 rentals within 12 months. And then my next goal is going to be, I want to have 2 additional sources of income. One of them being the rentals, one of them being my real estate, and then a third one I'm still in the defining process of what that's going to look like currently. But as of next year, all of our kids will be in school. So our youngest will be in kindergarten. So that allows my wife to probably do something, in the real estate world where we're kind of determining how that's going to look. But so yeah, she's the one she's the big relationship builder. She'll join a club and, be the president by the next year. So I'm kind of excited for that. So we'll see what happens.
That's great. Cool. So then, as you guys think long-term, then, what's in store for you? Kind of what are those bigger goals out there? Whereas you think about either financial freedom or time freedom or both, kind of what does the next 10, 20 years look like for you? What are the things that you're focusing and honing in on?
Yeah. So, over the next 10 years, I would like to be able to live off of mostly passive income, and that would be, either a referral business, that would be, rental income, or that would be, owning a team, but kind of, stepping back to, having a listing side, having a buyer side, and, probably a manager of some sort. I mean, that's kind of where the next 10-ish plus years I'm, going to be focusing on. So. Yeah.
Cool. Well, maybe kind of thinking about advice. So if you go back and you think, because for so many people, If you're in the real estate business, if you're an agent, people always, just like I always talk about, everybody's thought about being in real estate. Most people in real estate have thought about doing rentals. So what would be kind of some of the tips and advice you'd give for people who are looking to start rentals or to leap into it bigger than they have before?
Yeah. Bigger than you have before. Like you can say, we wish we would have done more. So
Mm-hmm.
I would say your first one's going to be the pain of doing it is more than actually doing it. So,
Mm-hmm.
and what I mean is, the fear of the unknown, is it going to work? Is the finding the deal. Once you have that, you'll be like, I should have done this a long time ago, type of a thing. So I guess if it's something you want to do, actively pursue it. Find the right deal, make it make sense on paper. Don't just think, well, hopefully it'll make sense. But we, use Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace or Zillow Rentals to determine what you think the average rent would be, and then just kind of work it backwards and make sure it makes sense. Talk to an accountant.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure that you have, you understand how the depreciation and everything works. And as an agent, you should be set up, in my opinion, as a corporation or an LLC. But more importantly, when you have your rental, to do the income through there too, for tax purposes and liability reasons and things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
talk to an accountant, start building those relationships, and let's see, just determine what's going to maybe set you apart from other landlords. Like our thing was the giving our people value and communication, and wanting to be there. You don't want to be somewhere where they're looking to get out after the 12 months. You know what I mean? It's going to cost you more, and have that built in too. Whether it's whether you think your average person is going to be there 2 years or 4 years, and a clean out, and then painting and potential carpet,
Mm-hmm.
have that kind of built in, have appliance budget built in. So you're making these 100, 200, $300 a month. Make sure you're putting some of that away. Or some of the appliance stuff, you could have like a home service plus or warranty type service. That would be definitely helpful, especially if the home is older than 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely some of the recommendations. We didn't touch too much on some of the flips that we've done.
Yeah, you can dig into that a little bit more if you
I'll
want.
touch that a little bit. So what I will say for those, the first one we did was an education. We made money, but it wasn't worth it. But it was worth it just for the fact of how much we learned, and how much knowledge we gained. Some of the relationships we built, what to do, what not to do, what made sense, what didn't make sense.
That's one of the things, Nick, that as I talk to more people and I think about this, the people that are afraid to start, even if you were to think of it from this perspective of, I'm going to run the numbers, here's what my projected profit is. Let's say something does go bad, and at worst I break even, or even worse yet, let's say you did lose a little bit of money. The value of what you learned through that is going to more than pay off in the future. I know there's a business leader that I like to follow, and he lost, I think it was like $100 million. And he talks about that was his education, right? So even if you lost some money off of it, the value of the learning that you had. Now, you're not going to go into a rental and say, well, the numbers don't make sense, I'm going to learn about it. You're still going to do that, but know that that buffer is there, where worst case scenario, if you did break even, you gain knowledge. If you did happen to lose a little bit of money, you just gain more knowledge for the future, versus people feeling like I have to net this or I'm not going to jump in. There is the educational value of getting started. Would you agree with that?
I would definitely agree with that. And I've always been a very, very hands-on DIY kind of a guy too. So that
Mm-hmm.
it didn't scare me quite as much. I did a lot of the stuff early on. The first house we did most of the work. The last couple of houses we didn't do most of the work. We were there for all the decisions. We helped with demo. We helped with some stuff. And we did most of the shopping and picking out stuff. But beyond that, we had, up to 4 to 5 guys that would, be there almost every day and get the stuff done for us. So, but yeah, the first one was definitely a learning experience. They got a little bit easier as we went along. I mean, you were able to project the numbers a little bit better to avoid some of the, you know, you're kind of guessing a little bit when you're, when you're going through how much is a kitchen, how much is a bathroom. Make sure you project all your holding costs too. That's something that we kind of didn't do in the beginning. We didn't really truly realize how much that was actually going to be, and then the property taxes, those are come due, and determine, where that money is going to come from. If you're, borrowing for the fixes on top of the property, you have that interest expense too. So I always, after the first one, just kind of erred on the side of caution. If I thought it was going to take, 3 months, I would budget for double that, because, there's the sell time too, and there's other things that you got to take into account. And then you've seen it, you've watched the shows, whatever, you always go over budget. You just do.
Yep.
By the time you start doing it, you're like, oh, this looks so good. Oh, maybe we should just do that too. And it's like, this kind of a snowball effect. I will say, another thing too is, if you can remove yourself, if you're like, okay, I'm not doing this for me, I'm doing this for somebody that's coming in here, it helps you maybe not spend as much. I mean, you really got to look at two things kind of side by side. Does this really make sense? Is this really going to do anything? But and we always did a very, very nice product, because, we've gone into flips as agents and we're like, really? Did they do that? So kind of like with our rentals, we wanted to make a nice product. And I think that helped command us, in our later flips to get, top of market. And we proved that every single time we did it, we got top of market in the area. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of some of the advice that I would have for flipping and stuff like that. So, oh, and I always, so every time on my equation sheet, I'd figure worst case scenario, kind of like when I sit down with a seller. I don't like to have any surprises in the end. So I always figure out, us contributing all closing costs, us, for, any repairs, that type of stuff. So I try to do a worst case scenario and then budget my numbers from there. And anything that we negotiate or do differently is just kind of on top. So. Yep.
And I love your mindset around, in terms of rentals too, that you're helping people, because I think that's a lot of people get into real estate. Obviously they get into real estate for the money, the flexibility and that kind of stuff, but people like to help people. And I think about, what you were saying about, being a responsible landlord, showing up the next day if they have a concern, like that's a big deal. I think about some of the rentals that I've had, or some of the renters I've had over time. One person, they were looking to move out of state in a year and they wanted a place to stay. That was actually the thing that got me over the hump for my first rental, was knowing I had them and I had them committed for a year. It's like, okay, we can be okay. Well, then that snowballed, the next person, they were getting married in a year. So they needed a spot to move to be able to then get set up for their wedding for the following year. Then we had a couple that was going through college. And so they needed a spot. So it's like you're helping people. I had another person who was coming out of a bad rental situation. So I said, here's my chance to show up and be a responsible landlord for them. They rented for a year, then they were able to go buy their own house, right? So you're able to have these cool stories of how you can help people as a landlord, and do it in a way that's honorable and respectful, and they really enjoy having you versus some other person that gives landlords a bad reputation.
And I will say too, I mean, if you have a good relationship with them, especially if you're a real estate agent as well, I mean, you can market to them, hey, when the time is right, I'd love to help you, get into a home. That's one thing I wish we would have done better early on. It just kind of naturally segued into that with a handful of them, but I feel like we could have done a better job of that, because some of our long-term people, ended up buying houses or whatever. And, I mean, there's naturally going to be the ones that have, family or friends or whatever, but that's one of the things we could have done a little bit better job in. And when you do have those, it makes that burden of them moving out a little bit easier, because, you're going to be helping them get into a home and also, making money on the other side of it. So,
yeah. And you would be more likely to be flexible if let's say you had a 12-month lease, they want to move out month 10. Hey, we're thinking about moving out. Well, hey, if I can help you with a house, let's go shopping together. Now they're ready to buy. You're not as upset about losing out on 2 months rent because they're helping,
I'm glad you brought that up. Or on the other side of things, hey, our lease is due in April, and most of the time you either got to make a decision, sign another year or figure something out. But if you want to buy a house, hey, I can be flexible.
I'll give you the sweetheart deal. Yeah.
Take 2 months, 3 months, whatever to, I'm still getting that income. I still know when you're moving out, because realistically you only need to market a home for a rental for not a very long time before it's filled.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that makes sense. And let's just say, ballpark rough numbers, you've got 10 rentals. Let's say half of them go on to buy a house later in life and use you. Well, that's 5 a year. If you're clipping along at, 30 transactions, if you had 5 people that were going to be coming due here to go buy a house you could help with, that's 16% of your business each year. And let's say you help them for 2 or 3 houses in the future. If you do a great job and you stay in touch with them and build relationships. Mm-hmm. That's the thing that people just don't realize in real estate is all the ways that you can line up a domino run here. I acquire a rental, I have a renter, that person can become a future client for 2, 3, 4 houses. They could have referrals for a couple of their friends and relatives too. Like that stuff just lines up in a way that benefits you when you do a good job for them and help them.
I should go back and look at it, but it's probably been at least 15, 20 transactions that I can attribute, to our renters. And, some of them, like you said, I helped him get in his first house, and a couple years later, 3, 4 years later, they sold and bought again. And mm-hmm. So, yeah, definitely. I mean, we've had a number of those. So,
mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. Well, anything else you want to add here? Well, I should mention, so how should folks get in touch with you? I know you're going to be moving here, but is there some way, anything that you want to plug, anything that you want folks, if they watch this now or in the future, how they could reach out with you?
Yeah. So, if anybody has any questions, about rentals or about anything like that, you're more than welcome, or flips, you're more than welcome to give me a call or shoot me an email, something like that. You can find me on Facebook. It's just Nick Correll. Mm-hmm. My phone number, I don't think I'm going to be changing it. It's 763-670-4621. And then my email that I'll have forever. My work one changes every now and again, but my personal one doesn't. It's NG, my last name, Correll, CORRELL at gmail.com. So, and then awesome. Facebook, Instagram, whatever. So find me on there.
Cool. And if you're listening to this and if you're in the Nashville area now or in the future, Nick's coming. He'd love to network with you and would love to establish any relationships to get some rentals and to get some real estate business going. So absolutely. Cool. Well, thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate you sharing your story, and thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks.